9 times the Rams sacked Sam Darnold, who held onto the ball for an average of 3.21 seconds, which is way beyond the league average.
That's pretty long.
It's way beyond the league high. Hanging onto the football didn't produce the explosive plays that they enjoyed so much. Instead, he was trying to find the big play all night and reverted to the Sam Darnold that we knew in New York and Carolina, and inspired a lot of people to say one thing: he's seeing ghosts again. He's seeing ghosts.
I think we're learning a lot about, potentially Sam Darnold's regression. I mean, he lost a lot of money over the last 2 weeks. We're also learning that Nick thinks that 3.2 seconds is a long time, and I'm sorry to any girl he's ever dated.
Walked into that two important games, the two most important games of the season, Katie.
Yeah, I also like to let people down in a huge spot too, okay? Let us live.
According to Sean, I do too, so.
When did I say that?
3.21 seconds, Sean.
That's true, yeah. Not like I've timed you or anything, Nick.
That would be weird.
I'm gonna just stick out of that conversation. I don't know what to do with that.
And speaking of getting the party started...
For the victory lap, though. They ain't never seen nothing like this before. Lit the room when I came through the front door. Ask me if I stress overcome, what for? Train under trees, please pardon my sycamore. Touch burning sands, cross lands, and stormy shore seasons in the year, yeah. Switch gears, we keeping haters in the rear. At the blood, sweat, and tears, and my goal so near. I see my victory so clear. I see my victory so clear. And today, we break through. 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 And today, we break through.
What is up, Gip Heads? It's time for episode 60 of the Gridiron Podcast. What, you guys don't like that?
Gip Heads?
It's what I'm calling our listeners now. Gip Heads. GIP. Gridiron Podcast. Gip Heads. You don't like it?
Okay. I mean, that's like Gearheads, so I guess that works.
Okay.
I think
we're
it's
gonna
fine.
roll with it.
If I'm honest,
yeah.
It sounds like it has potential to be a little problematic. We'd have to do some fact checking.
Yeah, it sounds a little slurry, but okay.
It's possible as long as I enunciate my words. Gip Heads. They'll be fine. Our listeners are cool people. Anyway, welcome to episode 60 of the only podcast in the world that combines the speed of Formula One and the high-octane intensity of the NFL, that being the Gridiron Podcast. As I mentioned, this is episode 60. As always, I am Sean Barie, and joining me, as always, is our resident NFL.com talent writer, Nick Shook, the bald behemoth. No flexing tonight, man? There we go.
Tighter shot here.
Yeah.
There you go.
We're in like 3 boxes right now.
You get one, and then you get the other. And then
okay.
You get a little here.
First you get the right, and then the left. They still make up 2 pythons. And then, as always, holding down the fort in Kimberley, British Columbia, our Canadian outdoor enthusiast, or as we like to call her, our Canadian queen, Katie Caldwell.
Things can be true. And also, Exhibit A of why you should tune in to YouTube or Twitch, because then you can see Nick, which usually is flexing in a horizontal box, and now it's more of a vertical one, so there's some movement happening, but yeah. Give us a watch if you would like. We usually
like
stream
you said,
Tuesday
we are
nights.
streaming.
You can chime in.
Yeah, we are streaming on YouTube and Twitch. Please comment. We love to read your comments as we record each and every week, as we do once a week. And as always, you can find us where, Nick?
You can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms, as well as YouTube and Twitch, where we are right now. And you can always reach us via email at where, guys?
Katie?
The Gridiron Podcast 3 at gmail.com.
That's the Gridiron Podcast 3. Damn those other 2. At gmail.com. It's a running joke that we like to have here. So we got a lot to get to this week as the NFL moves into the divisional round. So we're going to recap the wild card weekend, the not super wild card weekend. I'm sorry, Nick. Why did the branding go from super wild card weekend to wild card weekend, and like nobody explained it to us? It was just like, hey guys, we're not calling it super wild card weekend this week.
Well, all good things must come to an end, and when you debut a new format, sometimes you want to spice it up with the word super, and now it is status quo, so nobody needs to be reminded that it's super. They're just here for the wildness that is wild card weekend, or should be, and maybe wasn't this weekend.
Could it be because that the super wild card weekend really hasn't been super since it's been implemented? Wild card team, AFC wild card team to win a game was in 2020. It's possible.
Who was that? Was that the Browns?
It was the Browns, man. Yeah, that was Baker Mayfield beating the Steelers, yeah. All right, we'll talk about the not super wild card weekend here in a second. Actually, let's get into that right now, because it's time for Shook's Rapid Reactions. We usually call it Nick's Rapid Reactions, but I feel like in the NFL world, the name Shook carries more weight. Am I wrong, Nick?
No, I think you're right. Most people would refer to me as that in public. In the days of around the NFL, oftentimes I would meet listeners and they would just call me the Pipe. So Shook fits. Yeah, definitely right in that same lexicon.
And you know what? My nickname at Fox 13 down here in Tampa Bay is Pipes, because of the voice, not because I can
There you go.
bench press 350 pounds like yourself. Close. I'm close. I'm
And we
only
all
off
have our
by
strengths, Sean.
250 pounds.
I'll be honest,
Either
I
way.
have no pipe-related nicknames.
Well, not yet.
Come on, Katie.
You win some, you lose.
All right, let's get into Shook's rapid reactions from the wild card weekend in the NFL. We'll start off on the Saturday game, starting off with a game I don't think a lot of people saw coming, because when you looked at this game on paper between the Texans and Chargers, the Texans kind of limped into the postseason. No Tank Dell. They've had their injury problems. They just didn't look good down the stretch. Everyone was picking the Chargers, and the Texans were like, excuse me, hold my beer, and dismantled Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. 32-12. Your final down there in Houston. Shook, what's your rapid reaction?
My rapid reaction is, wow, what a shocker. Where was this Texans team all year? Well, I can tell you, they've been lingering in the background on the defensive side of the football for quite some time, especially in the last 6 weeks. They've played really good ball on that side of the field. Derek Stingley has had a hell of a year. They've actually suffered some losses there, but none of that mattered in the postseason because they got after Justin Herbert. They forced him to turn the ball over a number of times. He finished with 4 interceptions. After only having 3 interceptions the entire season, he had his worst game of the season, perhaps of his career. His second straight playoff clunker of sorts after they blew that game against the Jaguars a couple of years back. And much like that season, their campaign ends in disappointment, in a shocking upset loss. Yes, they were the road team, but most people expected them to win. They had no running game to speak of. Vlad McConkey carried their air attack almost single-handedly, 9 catches for 197 and a touchdown, including an 86-yard reception. And the Texans played solid ball. Joe Mixon in the ground game put it away in the second half. C.J. Stroud did a good job of keeping them afloat early, and it really came down to the fact that Justin Herbert couldn't stop turning the ball over. So a shocking result. Texans, for a second straight year, face a team with a red-hot offense and shut them down when they come to H-Town, and now they're moving on to the divisional round. And we'll see. I didn't pick them against the Chiefs, but the fact that they're here, I think, is an accomplishment in itself.
Back in their old 225 Saturday spot. I feel like the Justin Herbert discourse is already a little bit. I'm kind of over it. But I'm also a Herbert apologist, but the discourse I find has been a bit annoying. But it is
What,
kind
how
of
so?
I didn't know that. I feel like there's a lot of like, oh, he's a garbage quarterback and blah blah, and he'll never be this. And like, I get it. It's one game, and it's not the time that you want to have. What was it, Nick? 4 turnovers? Did you say?
Yeah, 4 interceptions.
Like that is objectively bad, especially when you've only had 3 the whole season. Like that's not a time to have a really, really bad game. But I don't know. I just wish that everybody would pump the brakes a little bit on just how hard everybody's been on Justin Herbert. Like, yeah, it was a trash game for him, but the team didn't look great overall, and I thought the Texans played really well. I just feel like, yeah, the discourse, people just love to jump on Herbert for things like that, and it just feels like, yeah, it was one bad game, awful time for it to happen, but I don't know. I'm not going as far to go, like, look at him as a player as a whole because of that one game.
I feel like there are 31 other teams. Well, maybe not 31 other teams because no one has the same quarterback, situation. But there are other teams that would take Justin Herbert in a heartbeat. Me being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, one of them. You do have to admit, though, the last 2 times we've seen Justin Herbert in the playoffs, I mean, man, has he laid some stinkers. Because the last time we saw him was that epic collapse the Chargers had against the Jags a couple of years ago. Yeah, it's something worth mentioning, but it's Justin Herbert. No one in their right mind is saying he's a bad quarterback. They need to move on. At least I haven't heard anything like that.
I've
But
seen
you can make
some
fun of
of that, and it just feels a bit much, I think.
Well, people need to talk about something, and no one knows what they're talking about when they say Justin Herbert's a bad quarterback.
Yeah.
We're in overreaction season. People like to look at stat lines and just assume the worst. People want Mike Tomlin fired for what happened in the Steelers game against the Ravens that we'll get to.
Why, Sean? What happened?
Nice.
Beats
Katie.
me.
It's classic, letting your emotions drive your actions because you lost a playoff game and you're disappointed. And it's commonplace this time of year. But let's look at the total body of work and not one bad playoff game. Now, if it happens a third time, I could start to understand that he would develop a reputation for failing in the playoffs. I would get that. But they didn't have a running game, man. Like, they didn't protect him well. Houston has a good defense. Nobody saw this coming because nobody was paying attention to the Texans, but it's a product of who they were facing as much as it was his mistakes. He threw some bad passes, but he also had an interception that went off a receiver's hands. Like, stuff like that happens sometimes. So pump the brakes, chill out. He's still a hell of a quarterback.
I mean, you can even look at Lamar Jackson, probably on his way to a third MVP season, and he still kind of has that, moniker of not good in the playoffs. Well, I mean, obviously that's changing this year. All right, Chargers and Texans, that was the only game played on Saturday, so we're going to go to Sunday next. Bills and Broncos. Fine. We'll go to the 8 p.m. game on Amazon Prime, which like 25 million people watched. Wow. Between the Steelers and Ravens, Bill Hillgrove, the old radio play-by-play guy for the Pittsburgh Steelers, said Ravens-Steelers should not be played at 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. It should be played in a dark alley at midnight. I would go one further and say Steelers-Ravens should not be played on a streaming service, but 25 million people apparently proving me wrong. Ravens easily take care of the Steelers. Can't say I didn't see this one coming. 28-14. Score wasn't even that close. Steelers didn't even cross, the 50-yard line until the second half. I mean, the offense was putrid. There was no fight in the defense. Ravens just had long, sustained drives. I'm sorry, Nick, this is your rapid reactions. Please, you go.
Yeah, I mean, that was the takeaway, and especially in the first half, like, to the point that the commentary team, like Kirk Herbstreit, was just like, where's the fight in the Steelers? It's like they're just walking around like they don't even want to be here. I mean, things have not gone well for them for a month. This is their 5th straight loss. They looked outclassed. They gave up 299 rushing yards to the Ravens on the ground. Like, that is embarrassing. That is against the ethos of Steeler football. Like, in a nutshell, that is not who the Steelers are, and yet that's who they became. Their offense has had issues for a while now. You knew they weren't going to keep up. I mean, I felt like this game was damn near over at halftime. Based on like what I was seeing, the Ravens came out and made a statement. They were up 21-0 by half. The touchdown pass to Justice Hill, I think Lamar held it for like 6.5 seconds before he found him for a touchdown. Like, they handled that whole situation wrong. He throws a pass short of the goal line, he still scores. Like, the Steelers had no fight. They had no resistance. And statistically, Russell Wilson finishes 20-29 for 270 and 2 touchdowns, but that was all in the second half. They had a small like sliver of hope. And then Derrick Henry breaks off a 44-yard run, and it's like, yeah, this is what I expected. The Steelers have been a bad team for a little while now, and it sends them into an offseason with a bunch of questions while the Ravens continue to look like, I hate to use this term because we used a lot on NFL Daily on Sunday night, but they look like a wagon offensively.
They do.
They do.
Yeah,
Katie, anything? Want to just dig the hole deeper for me?
I just don't know. I feel so bad that a Steelers fan is in this conversation, Sean. I'm sorry.
I don't.
Please don't. Please don't. Because part of me realized that I was so fortunate to grow up in the era that I did grow up in, right? It wasn't quite the Steel Curtain 70s, but I got to see some good years, so please don't feel bad for me.
I don't feel bad for you at all, because when we went to college, all I had to hear was, "Stairway to 7, we're getting that 7th ring, here it comes."
It's
and they went to the Super
It's
Bowl.
quite a long stairway, Nick. It's quite a long stairway. We're still climbing it.
It's a Sisyphean climb at this point. Like, my God, just push the boulder up the hill for the rest of eternity, Steelers fans. And you know what? You've had enough success. You can have a little period like this. But I will say, the calls for Mike Tomlin to be fired, are you guys dumb? Like, are you stupid?
I would like to point out that I am not one of those fans calling for Mike Tomlin to be fired. But that being said, but that being said, Nick, you do have to go, hey, this is, all right, the last couple of playoffs, it's been bad Steelers teams versus wagons, okay? The Chiefs, the Bills. But the Ravens, you look at this and go, yes, the Ravens are a better team, 100%. They should have won that game, and 9 times out of 10 they will win that game. But something about that rivalry has always kept those games close. The last 2 games between these two teams have not been close, okay? And you're right. There was no fight in the Steelers. That falls on coaching, Nick. Why was there no fight in this team? Against your biggest rival on prime time, with your season on the line, and you're right, they just walked in there like it was a normal Saturday night. There's been no fight in this team for a while.
Yeah, your best weapon is a diva. And your defense lost their way. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they changed defensive coordinators, because for all the money invested, all the talent over there, not good.
Well, yeah, it's the NFL's highest paid defense, and for 127 straight snaps, TJ Watt hasn't recorded a single statistic. Not a pressure, not a pass breakup, not a tackle for loss, or
hit.
sack. 127 straight snaps. Steelers lose they fell off a cliff there at the end. It reminds me of 2021 all over again. And you're right. I want coaching changes. I don't want Tomlin to be fired, but I don't want Arthur Smith back. I didn't see anything out of him that made me think, yeah, this guy is he's like a genius when it comes to making an offense, and he finds the gaps and he finds the ways to get the best out of his players. He barely went to George Pickens in the first quarter at all. Like, what are we doing here? Pat Freiermuth, I thought, was going to pop off this year. I mean, he was still effective, but not really. Like, we fell into the same old trap. And for some reason, he brings in Cordero Patterson, and he becomes kind of like the hybrid number 2 running back at times. It was just a study in futility. And I was just looking at this going, this is borderline incompetence. I don't like what I'm seeing. So, yeah, Terrell Austin can go. That's fine. He has the NFL's highest paid defense. And it's not just high paid. It's high talent, too. You have TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith. You have Landon Roberts, a great run stopper. You have Peyton Wilson, who's going to be a budding superstar. You've got Joey Porter Jr. You've got Dante Jackson. You've got Deshaun. This is a good defense talent-wise, and you couldn't figure out ways to use them better. I just have too many questions, and unfortunately, they have no answers because the proof is on tape. It didn't look good.
Yep.
I just don't really know what the identity is of this team right now. And it feels like it's kind of just mediocrity. Because when you look at the team, especially their defense, it looks like they should have put more of a fight up against the Ravens, but their offense just hasn't been super inspiring for a while now. There was a short window this season where we talked about, Russ is finally airing it out, and Russ looks like old Russell Wilson again. And I know that Pickens is being a bit of a diva about it, but I also kind of get it. When I watch the game and I watch how everything was unfolding, if I'm George Pickens and I know the talent that I have, I'd be a bit frustrated too. And when you look at this team and see what the potential could be, they're just not getting there. And I'm on the same page. I'm such a fan of Mike Tomlin. I think I've talked a lot about Mike Vrabel in this light, but I think he's someone that typically gets the most out of his guys, more than another coach would with the same group of players. Things do have to change, but I think a lot of it is on offense. They feel so mediocre, which is so disappointing because they were so fun for such a long stretch of this year. And it just does not look like the same team at all. Who's their quarterback next year?
Wilson says he has unfinished business and wants to come back to Pittsburgh. I think a lot of
Yinzers Russell Wilson right now. Play
What's
better.
That?
It shouldn't be up to Russell Wilson.
No, it shouldn't. And I think a lot of Steelers fans would, because I look at the quarterback market right now in terms of going to find a veteran quarterback. There really isn't one unless you want to roll the dice on Aaron Rodgers, which personally I would rather have Russell Wilson back. I think they're going to run it back with the same quarterback room.
Sam Darnold, you are a Pittsburgh Steeler.
No, thank you.
You know what's funny, Katie?
Talk about that in a second, but no thank you.
Here's a little tease. You'll actually see a column that I wrote today on Sam Darnold's potential landing spots on NFL.com tomorrow. And I did include the Steelers in there, but there's a little bit of logic in there to see.
I mean, that's fair because they are in the quarterback market, but I think a lot of Steelers fans are actually warming up to the idea of kind of running it back with the same quarterback room, but making it an honest quarterback competition, not this, it's a competition. Russell Wilson's the guy. They want to see what Justin Fields can do for a full season because, the offense wasn't looking particularly amazing when Justin Fields was the quarterback, but he has a different skill set. And, I mean, the Steelers were 4-2. They were 3-0 against winning teams with, Justin Fields under center. So, I don't know. I think the talent is still there. But you guys both said it. There needs to be a fight. Let me learn you something about Yinzers. We're fine if we lose. But for the love of God, this city is built on, blue-collar mentality. You better damn well show us that blue-collar mentality on the field and fight. If you lose, fine, but you better go down swinging. And the Steelers have just not done that towards the end of the season.
No.
Yep, and that's why we'll see what they do in the offseason, because they should not change their coach, but they do need a come to Jesus when it comes to identity. Let's get to the next game.
Yeah. All right, we're on to Sunday. Broncos, Bills. Yeah, I picked the Broncos in this one. I made a boo-boo. Bills win this one 31-7, and to quote Nick Shook just a few moments ago, the Bills look like a wagon.
Yeah. The touchdown pass to Ty Johnson was basically the knockout punch. It was on 4th down, and it was just classic Josh Allen improvising. He almost went out of bounds, Ty Johnson, in the back of the end zone, but managed to make the catch, and then they just piled on from there. A 55-yard touchdown pass to Curtis Samuel, another field goal just for good measure. James Cook runs for 120 yards on 23 carries. The Bills lean on 6 offensive linemen in a personnel grouping at an incredible rate, because Denver essentially said, we're going to make you earn it, and we're going to make you go on long drives. And as a result, listen to this. Time of possession difference. Buffalo, 41 minutes and 43 seconds. Denver, 18 minutes and 17 seconds. That's how you lose a playoff game on the road, when you simply don't have the football. They had a shot. They had a 7-0 lead. They missed a field goal just before halftime, and that was all she wrote, essentially. Superior team wins. The Broncos end a nice season, and that's it. It was a nice season. Congrats. You made the playoffs. Yeah. You got to get better.
You have your quarterback of the future. Like, the future looks bright. If you're a Broncos fan, you don't want to get blown out of the playoffs, but at the same time you go, okay, I didn't expect us to be here with a rookie quarterback and all this stuff. We moved on from Russ. We got Bo Nix, who a lot of people thought was like the kind of, along with Michael Penix, like the head scratcher pick. Like, well, you only picked him because he was the only one left. Well, Bo Nix looked pretty good this season, just not in the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, if you're a Broncos fan, like, okay, it is what it is. See you next year.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of expectations, as we talked about, and this has been, I think, overall a net win for the Broncos. I love the way that offense looked. Like I said last episode, like, I could watch Bo Nix to Cortland Sutton all day. I love what that team has going. Like, it feels like there's not a lot of teams that are going to beat the Bills right now. Bills Ravens is going to be insane.
Yeah.
But
it's going to be great.
Like, in certain matchups, I think the Broncos would have had more of a chance, but I think this doesn't speak to the Broncos as much as it speaks to how well the Bills are playing right now. So, yeah, if I'm a Broncos fan, like, that was a not as great of a game, especially in the second half, but the future looks bright in Denver.
So both of those fan bases leave that game and go, or at least feeling somewhat good. The Bills because they get to move on and this is where they thought they would be. And then the Broncos fans because, well, okay, the future looks bright. This is probably our ceiling for this year anyway. We go from a game where everyone kind of leaves feeling at least somewhat satisfied to a game where, win or lose, I don't think either fan base or team is quite satisfied in the Eagles and Packers. You talk about two teams that had high expectations this season, and you kind of expected this, slobber knocker of a game, and what you got was kind of like an ugly game a little bit. Like, the Eagles win 21-10 against the Packers, and it's kind of like, well, they didn't look too good doing it, and the Packers, I mean, if you lose to the Eagles, fine, but in the manner that you did, Jordan Love, we just paid you all that money, and you go out there and, like, you do your best Dak Prescott impersonation, throw 3 like, what are you doing out there? So, yeah, I mean, the Eagles move on, but does any team feel relatively good coming out of this game, Nick?
Yes, the Eagles do, because their defense played phenomenally, and I think that's their identity at this point. Their defense has been awesome since like week 9. Their offense, Lane Johnson described early in the season as being constipated, and there was a period where they kind of found their rhythm, and then Jalen Hurts had the concussion. What I saw from the Eagles offense was rust. Jalen Hurts hasn't played in a few weeks. They've had to start Kenny Pickett in one game and Tanner McKee in another. They essentially rested their starters in week 18, and they just hadn't had a lot of reps, but their defense was so good that it didn't matter. Turning over Jordan Love 3 times, yes, he had some self-inflicted wounds, but they got a turnover on the first play of the game on a kick return, and they immediately scored, and when that happened, I was like, oh, here we go. Eagles are going to roll. And then I check back in, and it's 10-0, and I'm like, what the hell? That's kind of who the Eagles have been offensively if they're not able to lean on Saquon Barkley often. Now, he had 25 for 119. That's still an average of nearly 5 yards a carry. But it kind of wasn't just there offensively. And honestly, for any other team, I'd be worried. But because I know how good their defense is, I'm not worried. I still have them as my favorite to win the NFC. They're going to go on the. They're going to stay at home and they're going to host the Rams, who will get to that result of that game in a little bit. I think they're fine. I think that this defense can stand up against anybody in this conference. If they face the Lions a week from now, a week and a half from now, since it's Tuesday night when we're recording, I feel good about their chances there too, because they have the defense to match that offense. And honestly, sometimes that's all you need when it comes to the postseason. When games are lower scoring, it's more of a chess match. They have the upper hand on that side of the ball. So yeah, it wasn't impressive, and that's fine. Jalen Hurts held him the ball too long. That's pretty common for him. It's also his first game back in like 3 weeks. That's fine. They won the game. It wasn't much of a contest. And Dallas Goedert gave us one of the best catch and runs out of a pass out of the flats that we've seen in a long time. Just stiff arms the same guy twice, runs in the end zone. That was satisfying enough for me to think, all right, they'll figure it out. Defense will play. Eagles, the superior team.
Their defense was definitely the story for me, especially out of that game. But when you look at their offense, it's, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and Saquon and everything. But that hasn't really been the story, especially the last few weeks. But their defense, like, they can go up against almost anyone and definitely make it a fight, even if their offense isn't doing much. The Eagles, I'd like their offense to step it up maybe a little bit, because the games are only going to get harder as you move through the playoffs.
Yeah, you got to do it at some point, yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely the story for me. A lot of injuries in that game.
They lost Nakobe Dean to what looked like a serious injury. But luckily they have the guys. Oren Burks, I don't know what it is about Oren Burks. He got drafted by the Packers, never really lived up to expectation. He ends up with the 49ers in the Super Bowl last year, and now he's with the Eagles with a team that could go to the Super Bowl as well. And I talked to him at length during, the media sessions before the Super Bowl last year. Katie, I saw you there. And he was just like, yeah, man, I'm excited for the opportunity. Like, he's just a nice guy. So it's good to see him on that defense. But I will say this, I want to redirect this to the Packers, Sean, because this was disappointing. Like, the Jordan Love thing was disappointing for sure, but I think it also fit who they've been over the last few weeks. They blew out the Saints a few weeks ago. That feels like a month and a half ago. They have had a problem offensively. They had a problem offensively in Week 18 when they were going back and forth between Love and Malik Willis. Matt LaFleur was like visibly frustrated with the lack of efficiency and effectiveness in the passing game, and that carried over into this game. Josh Jacobs, for as good as he's been with them this year, he goes 18 for 81 and 4.5 yards per carry, a touchdown. But like, that wasn't enough because they kept turning the ball over. So like, when we went to the playoffs, I looked at the standings and I looked at the seedings and everything else, and I looked at the Packers and I thought, a few weeks ago I could see them maybe making a run, but they felt very much like their record indicated, which is an 11-6 team. And then they played like an 11-6 team against a 14-3 team in the playoffs. Sometimes the records are all you need to know in these games.
I don't even think they played like an 11-win team. They played down. They fell flat, man. I'd be very disappointed, and I know Packers fans are, based on what I've seen on social media. From that game, though, to Sunday Night Football, the most entertaining game of the wild card weekend, at least certainly the closest. You had the Washington Commanders and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Game I was at, covered along the sidelines. I think all of us last week picked the Commanders to win this game. And I didn't feel great about that pick because I didn't know which Buccaneers team was going to show up, because
and which
3 weeks ago they get demolished, or 4 weeks ago now, a month ago, they get demolished by the Cowboys, and you're like, what the heck? What? How did you lose to the Cowboys? Then they head out to the West Coast and just absolutely stomp on the Chargers, come back home, stomp on the Panthers, and then week 18, a win in your in game, and they barely eke out a win against the New Orleans Saints, who had nothing to play for at that point. So I just didn't know what Buccaneers team we were going to get. And this was just a good game. This was just a good game where I don't even want to say the defenses dominated, because both teams just had very long, sustained drives. The Buccaneers only had the ball 7 times. They had 7 possessions in that game, all game long. Both teams, just very long, sustained drives. So 23-20, the Commanders walk off the Bucs. Nick, your rapid reaction.
Well, Sean, I'm glad you mentioned the possessions, because that was the story of the game. How do you go into a road environment as the underdog, at least in terms of seeding, and come away victorious? You win in time of possession. And I know I've already referenced time of possession once, but it often matters so much in these close games. They had an 11-minute advantage in time of possession in this game, because they simply kept the Buccaneers off the field. Now, the Buccaneers contributed to that in the second half. But the crazy thing is, and this might be like a historical achievement despite the loss, the Bucs had the ball like so infrequently that if you go look at their success rate, which is a big indicator of how well a team plays in a game, according to Next Gen Stats, their success rate was 52.3% on all offensive plays. That's good. That's like a really good number. But they just didn't have the ball. And especially in the second half, this was a game that could have gone either way. Like they go down the field, 10 plays, 72 yards. Bucky Irving gets a 4-yard touchdown catch from Baker Mayfield, and they go tempo the whole drive. And it feels kind of like they've got the Commanders on skates a little bit. They just kind of collapse, and they show a shot at Dan Quinn on the sideline. He's kind of like, well, yeah, okay. Like the Buccaneers are an offensive team. And then the Commanders respond and take the lead again with a touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin. I think that was on 4th down. Big play from Jane Daniels, but the only reason they were able to respond is because why, Sean?
Because the Bucs fumbled the football. If I can, real quick, too, because I was in the end zone shooting on the field when Bucky Irving scored that touchdown. And I stayed in that end zone, or I think the quarter switched. So now it's the fourth quarter, so I was back in the same end zone. But Jaden Daniels and the Commanders are driving, and they went for it on 4th down, and they got it. Dan Quinn was being very aggressive on 4th down because, Nick, like you said,
yes,
he needed to keep the Bucs offense off the field. That's how you win that game, and they did a great job of doing that. But when they go for it on 4th down again inside the red zone, oh my, someone's upset.
Katie, for those of you listening on an audio medium and not video, Katie's like, I'm muted. Hold on. Just keep
Hold
going.
on 1 second. When the Commanders go for it on 4th down again, and the Bucs defense actually comes up with a big stop, which is huge for this defense, which has been so banged up all season long. I looked up in that moment, and it's 20-17, and I go, oh snap, the Bucs are getting the ball back with about 9 minutes to go. Oh, this is huge. Wow, they might actually win this game. And then I remember.
Well, no, it was 17-13 then. The Buccaneers were winning when they got that stop.
I remember I was walking down to the other sideline, or down to the other end zone, and I'm looking up at the Jumbotron, and that's when I saw the fumble. I was like, no. Oh. And that was that really was the game. That really was the game. Nick, sorry, continue. I interrupted you there.
That was a product of the snap count. Like the Buccaneers self-destructed in the 4th quarter. When you run,
that was on rookie
jet
center
sweep,
Graham Barton. Probably the only thing he's done wrong all season long.
He did another thing wrong later. When you run the jet sweep, it's all about timing. You have to get the snap out in time for the quarterback to get the ball and turn and hand it off. If you're late, he's going to miss the window of opportunity to hand that ball off. And he was just slightly late. And because he was slightly late, Baker couldn't give a clean handoff to Jalen McMillan running the jet. He fumbles. Ball lands in the grasp of Bobby Wagner, the veteran captain who came to Washington to play for his old Seahawks defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn. And he makes the biggest play defensively of the season for the Commanders by getting that fumble recovery. And given a second opportunity to convert in the red zone, the Commanders get it done. And then it's 20-17. And you're like, all right, the Bucs are going to get the ball back. They're going to be fine. They drive down and they settle for a field goal. And they settle for a field goal because there's a 3rd and short opportunity where they line up. It's 3rd and like an eyelash. And I have pretty long eyelashes, okay? It's like long enough to measure here, right?
Flex on them.
But it was about, yeah. But at the same time, like, that's all you need. All you got, you could sneak it if you want. They line up, and Graham Barton snaps the ball early. Nobody else moves but Graham Barton when he snapped the ball to Baker. Baker's surprised by the snap. It turns into a broken play. Half the Commanders' defense is in the backfield, and they get the stop and force the Bucs to settle for 3. And then the Commanders get the ball with one last opportunity in that tie game to go down and win it, and they go 10 plays, 51 yards. They use the last 4 minutes and 41 seconds, and Zane Gonzalez, he doinks the field goal in off the right upright for the game winner, and it's 23-20, and that's the final, and the Bucs are stunned. Rightfully so, they're stunned because they probably felt like the better team. I felt like they outplayed the Commanders, but they didn't get the stop they needed. Jaden Daniels gets a big pickup on a run off the edge to keep the drive alive. Made all the plays that you expect from a veteran, but he made it as a rookie, continues the sensational rookie season, and Washington's moving on, and the Buccaneers are going home probably still stunned that they lost that game.
They very much are. As someone that was in the locker rooms for exit interviews, they very much are. And I wish I could show you the video because I was right under the uprights for that doink, that walk-off doink, and you can hear this group of Buccaneers fans behind me, and I know them well. They were cheering. They're like, yeah! Oh. And I just hear an audible, oh. I'm like, yeah. Because and there were a lot of Washington fans there. I mean, I know it's Tampa, it's a transplant town, but pretty much the entire visiting sideline was Washington fans. And so it was very loud in the stadium when that went through. But
yeah, you could hear them on the broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's Tampa, man. It is what it is. It's a transplant town.
Katie.
I do feel validated that all of us were kind of back and forth on that one because either team could have won that game. I'm disappointed that both of them weren't able to move on because the Commanders, I'm super excited for them. I can't wait to keep watching Jaden Daniels, that offense. I love Dan Quinn. They're playing with house money. Like, they have absolutely zero expectation moving forward. I was hoping to watch more of the Bucks because they've just been so fun this season, especially on offense. Like, I love their rookies like Bucky Irving and then Jalen McMillan and then Mike Evans has yet another amazing season. Baker's playing super well for the most part. Like, I still wonder how injured he is right now because it feels like there was a pretty big, I don't want to say drop off, but it just feels like there were a lot of moments where this isn't the Baker we're used to seeing this whole season, but they've just been such a fun and likable team to watch, and it would have been fun for both of them to not have to have played each other and move forward, because I just feel not done watching either of those teams right now.
I feel like this has been a very fun team to cover this season for the Buccaneers, but this loss kind of forces them into a situation where you have to ask yourself some questions and address some issues on defense, for one.
Right.
I mean, I did a story today for Fox 13. You can go check it out on fox13.com, shameless plug, where they were just so... Nick, I even texted you, like, where can I find stats for, like, manned games lost? Because this team was so banged up from the get-go, right? Like, Antoine Winfield Jr., all-pro last year. Someone asked Todd Bowles yesterday in exit meetings, why wasn't he a factor this year? He missed 8 games due to injury. And I don't care, like, even if you're back on the field, you're not at 100%. You can just, I mean, in the same game, the Bucs lost Chris Godwin and Mike Evans when the Ravens came to town. Mike Evans out for 4 weeks. Chris Godwin with a dislocated ankle. He may never play again in a Bucs uniform. Like, it's just, that forced some of the young guys to step up, like Bucky Irving, like Jalen McMillan, like Tyke Smith. Like, they have a very good young core. And someone even asked Levante David yesterday, you know, the fact that this team has a good young core, does that, like, weigh in your decision to maybe come back and play for him? And I'll tell you what, Levante David was like, well, they do have a good young core, and they're going to be fine with or without me. So keep your eyes on that. But they do. They have a good, like, Jason Light's been in his bag drafting for this team, so...
Yeah.
We'll see what happens going forward in this offseason, but I think this loss forces them to address some issues that were glaring this season, I'll say.
Yeah, and you know, Katie, you said, I wish both these teams could have advanced. Well, they could have advanced if the Rams would have won over the Seahawks in Week 18, but instead, the Rams lost, which meant that we go to Monday night, and the wild card weekend finale played between the Los Angeles Rams and the Minnesota Vikings, not in Los Angeles, but in Glendale, Arizona, because of the wildfires that have affected Los Angeles and forced the game to be moved to Glendale, where the Cardinals, tip of the cap to you, did a great job of making it feel like home for the Rams, even if it was about a 50-50 crowd.
Were you guys
split.
shocked
and so last
when
minute.
Were you guys shocked when the broadcast came on and, like, you heard the noise of the stadium and it sounded like... I thought I was going to see a half-empty stadium. I thought this was going to be like COVID. Yeah, like, that was amazing what the Cardinals, what the Rams, what the Vikings were able to do.
The Rams had 30 buses take Rams fans from Inglewood to Glendale on the day of the game, and they left at, like, the crack of dawn. So that's why they got out there. They sold 25,000 tickets to season ticket members on the Rams side, like within the first hour or two of those tickets becoming available. The Cardinals went out and ordered 300 gallons of paint that perfectly matched the paint that the Rams use at home. They put Rams banners up. They had Rams graphics and images on the ribbon boards and on the scoreboard. They had the Who's House, Rams House chant going in there. It felt like a neutral site game, but it felt like the NFL and the Cardinals doing their best to make it feel like a home game. And shout out to the Rams, who end up winning the game in convincing fashion, 27-9 over the Vikings. Wow.
That is sports at its finest right there. But you said it. It's 27-9. Nick, your rapid reaction. And then we'll get to the Darnold head over here to the right.
Sorry, Katie.
Former Darnold? I'm just kidding.
Still got that
wow.
I can't.
Jump. First off the ship, women and children into the lifeboats. That includes you, Katie Caldwell.
Ooh.
Boy.
I'm a woman, and oftentimes I feel like a bit of a child, too, so I'm the first to go off the Darnold train.
As the violins play on the deck. Yeah,
Gentlemen, it has been an honor.
This was a bit of a shocking performance for a couple of reasons. One, the Vikings' explosive offense did not show up to Glendale. And it was because the Rams and the defensive coordinator, Chris Shula, put together a masterful game plan. They confused Sam Darnold from the word go. Man coverage, he could not do anything against. They ran a lot of it early. They got after him. They sacked him 9 times in the game.
9 times is crazy.
Eight
Hold
different
on, hold
Rams
on.
contributed to those sacks.
Voice of the principal from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. 9 times.
Yes.
Yeah.
9 times the Rams sacked Sam Darnold, who held onto the ball for an average of 3.21 seconds, which is way beyond the league
That's
average.
pretty long.
It's way beyond the league high, which was Lamar Jackson this season at about 3.13, I believe. It was Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Sam Darnold. He does hang on to the football long, but unlike most of the season, hanging on to the football didn't produce the explosive plays that they enjoyed so much and they benefited from so much. Instead, he was trying to find the big play all night, and instead he became a hesitant quarterback and reverted to the Sam Darnold that we knew in New York and Carolina, and inspired a lot of people to say one thing: he's seeing ghosts again. He's seeing ghosts.
I think we're learning a lot tonight, though. I think we're learning a lot about, potentially Sam Darnold's regression. I mean, he lost a lot of money over the last 2 weeks. He did. We're also learning that Nick thinks that 3.2 seconds is a long time, and I'm sorry to any girl he's ever dated. But just
Walked into that
Nick,
one.
You did. I'm sorry. What does this loss, and coupled with last week's loss to the Lions, what does that mean for Sam Darnold, Nick?
Well, as Katie collects herself
I
after
had
that
to mute
great
my
joke
mic.
by Sean.
It's beautiful. I couldn't stop laughing.
He basically put together a terrible game in a win, and you have the number 1 seed in the NFC, and you get a bye in the first round against the Lions. He went, I think, 17 for 41 in that game. I'm going to double check that number real quick. 18 for 41 for 166 yards in that game. They scored 9 points. He missed guys. He was inaccurate. He seemed flustered that whole game. And you thought, well, okay, it's a big time game. It's against the Lions. He'll recover. He didn't. He was just as bad. Statistically, he was better, 25 of 42, 45, a touchdown and interception. But visually, it was so much worse. There are a number of different stats that could explain this story beyond the basics for how bad he was. It was him holding onto the ball too long. It was him being hesitant to throw the ball. It was the Vikings not running anything short for him when he's getting attacked by the Rams defensive front all night. It was just a failure offensively. And when they walked off the field, you saw Justin Jefferson, and he just looked exasperated. Like he had no answer for what had just happened. I can't believe our season just ended like this. Well, it ended like this because, frankly, your game plan sucked offensively, and what got you there wasn't going to win in the playoffs against a defense that properly prepared and executed, and that's what the Rams did. So I think he's lost a lot of money. I could see him coming back to Minnesota as a plus backup, and J.J. McCarthy takes over. But the whole idea of paying him the big money to keep him around is gone.
I was about to say, I think the biggest winner from last night, it was not the Rams, it was J.J. McCarthy, because all this noise about, well, you could trade J.J. McCarthy, get a couple picks for him maybe, and then give all that money to Sam Darnold. J.J. McCarthy's like, I don't need to do anything right now. I'm back. I'm the starter next year. But Katie, you've been a Darnold head. You have been a supporter of his all season long. And I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like every week, this storyline continued. Everyone's like, oh, he has the Baker Mayfield story arc, a redemption story. I feel like in the end it was kind of a Case Keenum story arc. Even less so because he didn't even get to the NFC title game. But I feel like we were looking, Katie, for excuses. We were looking for those like holes. We were looking for a reason to not anoint Sam Darnold as this, redemption story.
Isn't it wild that at one point of the season he was like firmly in people's MVP talks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
never
funny
had
to
him
look
there,
back
but
at
yeah.
that now.
Who's your MVP, guys? Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, or Sam Darnold? We lived in wild times there for a second.
His whole arc of this season was just so interesting because I feel like if you look at the season as a whole, he did very, very well, and I still think he really exceeded the expectations. I don't ever think the Vikings were as good as what their record was, but to have the 2 worst games of the season be, and like I just talked about this with Justin Herbert, so I don't want to put Darnold in a different category, but it's a tough time when you're in a contract situation of playing for where am I going to be next? Where am I going to be signing? What's that contract going to look like? Like, I picture his agent the last 2 games, like, outside. Like, you guys know the meme of Ben Affleck with his cigarette? Just, like,
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
I feel like his agent during the last 2 games is watching that just kind of going like, fuck, man. Like, my job just got a whole lot harder because he's had so many good moments. And then he had one really bad stinker during the year. Was it when they were overseas? Anyways,
There are
I
only
can't
4
remember.
losses this year
Yeah.
versus the
Yeah, it
Rams and to
was.
the Lions.
It was. It was the
Yeah.
overseas game against the Jets. They won that game, but it wasn't good.
Yeah, he looked really, really off in that one. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Sam Darnold because
There we go.
Actually, hold on. I shared the wrong screen.
You're just
Hold
sharing
on.
the entire Google screen. There you go,
Yep.
Nick. We're still learning this platform.
which that meme, by the way,
Here
I
we go.
resonate with so deeply and so personally. I feel like that's me at least like 4 to 5 times per day. Like I
Who
feel
doesn't
like I
feel like that
exist
in
for
the year
this
of our
state.
Lord 2025?
Exactly. But yeah, it's
That's been
an
me for a
interesting
year.
time for this to be falling apart for Sam Darnold just because there's been so many eyes on what's going to happen with him next year. Where is he going to be? What are the Vikings going to do with this? It feels a little easier for the Vikings to be like, see you.
Yep. That's exactly what I was.
Yeah.
If you listen to Kevin O'Connell after the game, he sounded wistful, as if like he knew it was over, unless they find a way to bring him back as a backup. And they could. Financially, they could. Like Greg threw it on NFL Daily, like 2 years, 30 million, 15 a year for a plus backup. That's not uncommon. That would make sense. It just makes me think like what teams that need a quarterback are willing to now take a risk on a guy who just showed that for as much as he did to prove that he was beyond that,
Pittsburgh Steelers.
he is.
No, sorry. I was going to say the
reverted
Las
to it.
Vegas Raiders.
Yes, but you have Aiden O'Connell. You have essentially the same thing.
I think Sam Darnold's a bit better than Aiden O'Connell, but
But
like
is
I
it worth
feel like
the money?
I don't know. I feel like Tom Brady is going to try and do whatever he can there, even though he's a minority owner. But I feel like Sam Darnold is now kind of falling into that Gardner Minshew category where it can be a starter in like a bottom 10 team.
And they
for
just had
half a
Gardner Minshew in Vegas.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying like you can be a starter for the right team, but the right team is a terrible team. Like it's not going to be a good situation for you in the end. So, yeah, I feel like I'd stay there if I were him. Or find... Maybe the Steelers are desperate enough for a quarterback. I don't know.
That's big Jeff Garcia energy right there.
Yeah, yeah. Almost falling into like a Fitzpatrick or McCown story arc. Which, I mean, they all had long careers, so that's not a terrible story arc. You have a good career in the NFL. Let's move to the divisional round. And because this... Nick, do you know how long we've even been recording for?
48 minutes.
Okay, cool. Let's go into the divisional round. Let's give our previews and pick for the divisional round quickly if we can, because we still got to get to Formula One
Okay,
talks.
but before we do that, real quick, I want to go to the chat because our friend Chris was there. And
Let's
he
go.
said something that I want to push back against. He said these wild card rounds are getting worse every year. Chris, let me
That's
just
recency
take
bias.
you. That is recency bias to a T. Because let's go back to last year. Texans 45, Browns 14, Chiefs 26, Dolphins 7, Packers 48, Cowboys 32. We had one game that was a one possession game. You had Bills 31, Steelers 17. You had Bucks 32, Eagles 9 at the end of the Eagles collapse that year. The one game that was thrilling was Lions Rams, which we then opened the next season with, and that was 24-23. You go to this year's playoffs and it's almost exactly the same. 32-12 Texans Chargers, 28-14 Steelers Ravens, 31-7 Bills Broncos, 22-10 Packers Eagles, 23-20 Buccaneers Commanders, right? That's the close one.
Right.
And then 27-9 Vikings. It's the exact same thing. So just as
If
much
I
as
may-
people bitched about the college football playoffs first round, wild card round was just as bad.
If I may for a second, I was just about to say, Nick, everyone is bitching and moaning about the college football playoff expanding to 12 teams, and the first round games were just blowouts, man. I still watched. I was still entertained. I don't care if Ohio State destroyed Tennessee. I don't care if Penn State destroyed SMU. I watched. It was fun. It's entertainment. Get off your high horse and just enjoy the games for what they are, okay? It's more games that matter. What, you want to watch the Pop-Tarts Bowl? Is that what you want?
Yes.
A meaningless
Yes,
game
I
which
do.
means
I
absolutely
do.
nothing?
Bad
I
example.
do.
Okay, hold on. Sorry, that was a bad. You know what? I'm sorry. Rewind. That was a bad example because the Pop Tarts
I
Bowl is
always wanna watch
perfect.
that one.
It needs to change nothing.
The
Pop Tarts.
Duke's Mayo Bowl.
You are perfect. But do you want to sit there and watch the Bahamas Bowl? Like who cares? Like these are games that matter. So I'm sorry. I'll get off my soapbox now.
I agree. All right. I just want to make that point.
All right, let's go to our divisional round previews. Starting off with Nick. What do you coin toss? What do you want to do? NFC or AFC first?
Well, let's go in order, and we'll start with Texans Chiefs. Staying
Okay,
in the
go for it.
4:30 p.m. Eastern slot on Saturday, the Texans go to
God
Kansas
bless
City
Houston.
to run back that playoff matchup they had, well, ages ago now. Back then, Bill O'Brien was their head coach, and the Texans had a big lead on the Chiefs before they came back, and we know what happened with the rest of that season.
24 to
28-0?
nothing.
I think it was 28-0.
24 nothing.
28, 20,
It was
20 something.
28 nothing.
I thought so.
It was 20 something nothing. It was in the 20s. We agree it was in the 20s. Yeah, we got Chiefs
Mid to
Texans.
high
It was
20s.
24-0. I just found it. And
Ah,
the
there we go.
the final, could you guess what the final was?
32-28.
51-31 Chiefs.
I don't remember that. That's been a couple of years now. I will say, I know, Nick, you are not, I need to preface this. Nick, you are not allowed to gamble. You are not allowed to go into a casino. You have nothing to do with any of that. But the Chiefs are favored by 8 points. This has all the makings of a blowout. I want to dog the Chiefs, but I can't because they've just proven time and time again this year that they are good. And guess what? They've actually been playing better football as the season has gone along. So my pick will be the Chiefs. I don't think either of you will differ in that.
I'm going to push back on that slightly.
Me too.
Houston's defense just put together a masterclass performance against the Chargers. I know the Chargers are not the Chiefs, but the Chiefs this season, I think it was until they played the Steelers, hadn't won a game by more than a possession.
Exactly.
So 8.5 is
Nick,
a lot. In fact, let's see. It was the Browns. It was the Browns was their first win by, because they lost the Bills by 9. Every other game was one possession except for the Niners was a 10-point game and the Saints. So most of them were within 2 scores. They beat the Texans by 8 in the regular season. So that line is close, right? And I can talk lines. I can't bet, but I can talk lines. I don't think it's going to have all the makings of a blowout. I do think the Chiefs will win, and I question whether the time off will put some rust on them. I think it's going to take them a little bit to get going, and I think Houston's defense will keep it close, and ultimately the Chiefs will advance, but it will be much more entertaining than we anticipate.
I have the Texans in this one.
Whoa! Katie sticking her neck out there.
Mostly just for like chaos purposes, because like come after me
Queen
if
of
they
chaos.
whatever it is, what it is. If the Chiefs won, okay, fine, they won, the Texans lost, but like the Chiefs were not blowing teams out this year, and all of their games, it's not like every single one was like 38 points, 28 points. Like they are different this year, and I just feel like the Texans, it's like they won that game and they're here and they really have nothing to lose. And I feel like we just assume that it's going to be the Chiefs every single year, but man, weird shit happens in the playoffs. And this one to me kind of feels like a bit of a trap game where everybody's just assuming that the Chiefs are automatic to get through. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. The way that the Texans looked, like you said, Nick, especially their defense, and if the Chiefs aren't putting up 1,000 points on offense, like, I think it's going to come down to the wire, and I think it's going to be close, and the Texans can just push all their chips into the middle and go, let's just, like, I think there's a world, especially with all the confidence they have after that last game. I have the Texans in this. I don't necessarily know how it's going to happen, but they looked fairly well-rounded, and I think their defense can make some noise. I love this for CJ Stroud. I love this for DeMeco Ryans. I think they're going to be way more in this than people realize.
Gentlemen, lady.
Yes.
We are all millennials in our 30s. We are all children of the Manning-Brady era. And we are all children that at one point said, I don't think the Patriots have it this year. They're not winning convincingly enough. Who does Tom Brady even have to throw to anymore? I don't see them doing it. And then they go off and beat the Rams in the Super Bowl in like one of the most boring Super Bowls ever. This is what this Chiefs team is. I'm not going to bet against them. I'm just not. I wanted to all season long. I learned my lesson time and time again. I'm just not doing it now.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm hoping this is more so
you're
of
entitled
just
to
a
that.
manifestation, if I'm being honest.
Yes,
No,
manifest.
that's
by the way,
fine. That's fine. We're gonna do this with every dynasty that we have. They're just not. I know they're 15-2, but they don't look that good. Okay, whatever.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
they are Thanos. They are inevitable.
I
Next
want
up.
to pull something up off the chat real quick because
Yeah.
Deontay Johnson was waived by the Texans. Again,
There we go.
by a team.
Cool.
By the 75th team this season.
Bye,
Who's
Deontay.
way by?
And we had Brandon jump in the chat, and I just want to say this is hilarious, and I tip my cap to you, sir.
Yes.
He said Deontay Johnson was pissed Derek Stingley had more receptions than him. Good job. Good job. Good joke.
Brandon, I'm nothing if not petty, and as a Steelers fan, I love that for me. there is some sort of like weird black magic the Steelers have going on where they move off a receiver and he just falls to pieces. The
That's true.
exceptions, I guess, I mean, Juju never became Juju Smith-Schuster again, but he did get a ring. Same with Antonio Brown, although Antonio Brown was sick for the Bucks. And then, what was it? Mike Wallace. He had an okay career after the Steelers, just nothing
Plaxico
too
Burress.
spectacular. Did get a ring, but also shot himself. So
Yes.
I feel like that one's a push.
You win some, you lose
Yeah.
most.
It's a push.
That's literally, again, Nick doesn't gamble, but in gambling terms, that's a push. Then next up on Saturday in the 8 o'clock game on Fox, we have Washington taking on Detroit. I feel like this is going to be a good game. I don't know if I'm stupid to think that.
I hope it is.
I would love it if it was, but I don't think Washington's defense stops Detroit. That's it. That's it. I don't care. Jaden Daniels can play great. It doesn't matter. I just don't think they need enough stops to keep up.
Is this the same formula, though, that they used against the Bucs? Just keep them off the field as long as possible? Against a defense that might even be worse than the Bucs.
I don't think you have that option.
Yeah, I don't think you do either. I think that this Lions offense is relatively inevitable. And now the defense in Detroit is banged up, so that can make it interesting, but they did just put together a hell of a showing against the Vikings in Week 18. They're coming off of a week of rest, so
I don't know if we can count that, though, because we see what Sam Darnold is.
Yeah, there's room for chaos, but Jared Goff's not Sam Darnold.
2 games.
No, it's 2 important games. The two most important games of the season, Katie.
Yeah, I also like to let people down in a huge spot, too, okay? Let us live.
Oh, according to Sean, I do, too, so.
When did I say that?
3.21 seconds, Sean.
That's true, yeah. Not like I've timed you or anything, Nick.
That would be weird.
I'm gonna just stick out of that conversation. I don't know what to do with that.
All right, everyone, let's do our picks. Commanders or Lions?
It's Lions. It's Lions by 10 plus. I don't know what the spread is, but it's 10 plus for them.
I will tell you the spread, Nick. The spread's 9.5 Detroit.
9.5.
Yep, there we go. 10 plus.
Man, this one, I think it could kind of be a shootout.
Okay.
But we've talked about it before. Like I said this, I think it was last episode. Like Aaron Glenn, I just have more trust for him every game, every season. Like I'm just such a fan of Aaron Glenn and what he does with that defense. No matter who gets hurt, it feels like they're able to just make adjustments and still be so great. But Sean, I'll admit, there is a part of me where I'm like, maybe it just was Sam Darnold. I'm hoping that this is a back and forth shootout. I think it could be closer than the 9.5 point spread. I think the Commanders are going to make this one interesting. I still think this just feels like the year for the Lions. But I think the Commanders, house money. I feel like they're just going to kind of throw it all out there, and they can make some noise on offense. It just depends on what Aaron Glenn can do with that. Their offense is on offense, they can beat you so many ways. It's incredible, the Lions. It's just to me, it's going to be when the Commanders have the ball, what are you able to do against the Lions defense? But I hope it's a back and forth shootout and they keep it close. I'm still going to go with the Lions, though.
I'm also going to take the Lions, but I think it will be closer than that 9.5 point spread because I've seen this. Todd Bowles is a great defensive coordinator, decent head coach, but great defensive coordinator. He gets the most out of guys even when they're banged up, even when they're replacements. And I saw what that Washington offense was able to do against the Bucs and against the Todd Bowles defense. I don't know, man. With as banged up as Detroit is, I can see Washington putting up some serious points. But you're right, that Detroit offense is just it's stupid good. So I'll take Detroit. Yeah, I'll take the Lions, but I'll say Washington covers. At the same time, how many times this season have we seen just something weird happen where Washington wins it? You can go back to the Hail Mary, the Bears game. You can go to the Eagles game where they had no business winning that game. You can go to even the last game against the Bucs where an ill-timed, ill-snapped jet sweep leads directly to a Washington win. Just weird things have been happening late in games with this Washington team. So if they're hanging around, just watch out.
That's fair.
Watch out because they've got something surrounding them, and I don't know if it's luck, if it's destiny, but it's something.
I also want to shout out Zane Gonzalez because he was opening up about his OCD because a lot of people were talking about his adjusting his hair and things like that. I am someone that also has OCD and I felt so represented and so validated hearing him talk about it. And I just thought that was important to note. I think it's cool that he spoke about that and that he's so open about how that affects his life and things like that. I'm just such a big Zane Gonzalez fan now, more than ever.
By the way, I saw a lot of people dogging him, oh, he's so stupid for doing that. Guy just kicked a walk-off field goal, sent his team to the divisional round. What are you doing, keyboard warrior? Also, if his nervous tick is to make sure that his hair is on point,
and his socks are good,
I'm okay with that. Yeah, hey man, I got some lettuce too. Gotta make sure it looks good before I go on air. I'm cool with that. Make sure the hair looks good, because when you rip off the helmet, you want the ladies to see the lettuce. You want it to look good. I'm cool with that. If that's your nervous tick, man, let it flow. Let the hair look good.
I'm
Hell
happy
yeah.
you talked about it though, because OCD, like, it manifests in different ways, but it can be so debilitating. And the fact that he's able to channel it in such a way and in such a high pressure way, like, I just feel really proud of
Yeah.
someone that I don't even
No.
know. But I'm really happy that that's being talked about right now.
Phenomenal. The Sunday matchups, though, we've got the Rams and the Eagles in the 3 o'clock matchup on NBC. Yeah, Eagles favored by about a touchdown at home. Nick, what do you think?
Defense, man.
Ooh.
Look, the Rams, Matt Stafford finally broke out of his 153 yard per game average by throwing for 154 yards in the first half. It was statistically not representative of who the Rams could be because they had such a big lead by halftime that it really didn't matter. Like Jared Verse takes the fumble back for a touchdown. They score again right before halftime. The offense comes out and makes a statement drive in that win, right? I don't see the same thing happening against this Eagles team. But the question mark for me is the Eagles offense going to find a way to get around that front four? Because Les Snead's done a great job of rebuilding that front four with Verse, Fisk, Byron Young, Kobe Turner. Like, they're just really good up front. Their defense has played really well down the back stretch of the season. So if Stafford can find a way to cut through this Eagles defense and keep it close, it'll be interesting. But ultimately, again, there's a reason I feel so good about the Eagles. It's their defense, and I think that's what powers them to victory here.
Katie?
The way the Rams came out in that game, like, that first drive, I was getting goosebumps again and again. Because, like, obviously, like, what's happening in Los Angeles right now, like, there's a big part of me that's just hoping for the Rams, for the city of LA. Like, with like, Nick and I both have roots in LA. Sean, I'm not sure if you do. And to all of our listeners in that area, like,
I have no roots in LA.
well, Nick and I
have no
both have,
roots in
like,
LA.
a lot of connection to LA. And, like, if any of our listeners in that area, like, good God, we love you. And I'm so sorry for what you're going through. But it felt like that was
It's
a game
also-
that, like, LA just needed to win. Like, it felt like it was inevitable for them. Just, like, that matters in games like that. That matters. Like, what
There's the old Bill Simmons thing, Katie, where he's like, there's like the Ewing theory, and then there's also like the team that like everybody's against us, like the tragedy thing, like the we're playing for a city thing. And I instantly felt that in that game where I was like, oh God, they're not playing just to win a playoff game. They're playing for a whole region. And like that stuff can be powerful.
And it was, and that first drive, you could just feel it. Like, everyone was so dialed in. And I think the Vikings defense was caught a bit off guard by that.
Yeah.
Because that first drive, I was watching it being like, oh, I know exactly how this game is going to go. And then it did. Like, it just didn't stop from there.
The Rams were 100% in their bag.
And you could see it and you can feel it. And it was really powerful and it was really special and memorable, I thought. This next game, I don't have quite as much of a read on, like you said, Nick. Like, their defense, Philly's defense is just so good. Man, the Rams have a lot to play for right now. There's a lot of emotion, and I think, like, none of that shows up on the stat sheet, things like that, but, like, there's a lot of feelings in that room, within that community. Like, I don't have a read on this game. I can kind of feel, there's a part of me that kind of leans Rams because the Eagles did get kind of banged up in that game, but this one is the one that I think I have the least amount of a read on heading into this next weekend.
I almost look at that game as a not quite as serious, but it almost kind of harkens back to, you know, when George Bush threw out the first pitch in Yankee Stadium, when the Saints walked back into the Superdome and had their first primetime game against the Falcons after Katrina. Like, that's kind of what it seemed like. Yes, I know the Rams were in Arizona, but like there was a lot of emotion, and it's very hard to root.
Happening. That's where it's so emotional too. Is it's not something you've walked away from and gone, oh wow, that was wild. How do we rebuild from here? This is when they leave town, and all of these people live in Los Angeles, and like they don't know if their homes or their friends or their family. Like, it was so intense because this is still, as we speak right now, a really, really intense situation for that region. So that was wild too, that even while they were playing, things are still really, really intense there.
And as a Canadian, Katie, would you ever root for a Toronto team?
I had to watch my mouth. I almost said so many bad words in a row. No.
Exactly.
PWHL
it's very
is
hard.
But other than that, if there's a tragedy, I feel like that could be different.
But again, that's what I'm getting at. Like, it's very hard to root for a Los Angeles team. Like, you got the sunshine, you got Hollywood, you got a $700 trillion.
No, I feel like we need to shut this down immediately. This isn't the time for this.
No.
I thought you were gonna go as somebody who's a Pittsburgh fan. I'm not gonna root for Philly, and that would make more sense than this. Don't go that direction. Don't do that.
We don't shit on the town of LA right now.
No. What I'm trying to say is, Okay, what I'm trying to say is, but just as a country, a lot of us like to root against LA, and I feel like in this moment, no one is.
Okay,
We
that's
see what's
better.
happening there. Yeah, like, where did you guys think I was going, for the love of God? Like,
You were on a runaway train, my friend.
Sorry, Nick and I were on the same page. We're like, Sean, no. But I hear what you're saying.
have some, okay, give me some credit. I do have a journalism degree, and I'm on air for a living, but okay, I digress.
You did.
But
He
no,
does. I
it
got
is
that the
easy
same
to
day.
root against. It is easy to root against the big cities that have all the teams and have all the money, but no one in this country was rooting against the Rams. Even people wearing, like, come on, Minnesota, it's Minnesota nice. It's Minnesota nice. Like, even they were rooting for the Rams somewhat. Like, nobody is sad to see the Rams moving on. It's inspirational. It's what we love about sports. And you're right, there is that emotion. Because even though, like, some of these players, they might not live in LA year round, like, they're still there. This is still their community. They still see what's happening and they want to play for their community. Yeah, it's a very powerful thing. That being said, give me the Rams. I'll take the Rams to beat Philly.
Oh, yeah. I love it.
I'll take them.
Ride the wave.
Was that good enough? Did I redeem myself there?
Yeah, sorry, Nick and I were both kind of thinking you were going the same direction. I'm like, oh, Sean.
No, where I'm sorry, hold on, not to derail the podcast. Where did you think I was going?
Let's not even go there. Let's
My lord.
last game. Let's go.
Oh, Sean, we love you.
Okay, good lord, guys. Last game, and this is the game that will get, I mean, how many people live on
Game
this
of the
planet? 8 point something billion. All of them going to be watching this game. Baltimore and Buffalo. The MVP candidates, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, going up against one another in the frozen tundra that is Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, New York. Nick,
So hyped for this game.
I don't know how you can put this into words, but this is one of the most built-up playoff matchups that I can think of in recent memory.
Ravens by 10.
I love that. I endorse that.
Look, okay. I had a bit of a meltdown internally last night, Monday night, watching the Vikings flop. Because there was an air of fraudulence with this team the entire season.
Who
and
did you
I
pick, Nick?
stuck
Who did you pick in that game?
The Vikings. And
There we go.
And the reason that I was so pissed off by the result was that it took me until week 16 or 17 to be like, you know what? I'm on board. Let's do it. I believe. Sam Darnold's had a great year, and then he just absolutely crapped down his leg the last 2 weeks, and they had very little fight in them. They essentially conceded that game with 6 minutes left, and I was like, I knew I should have trusted my instinct. I knew I should have trusted my gut. I know a fraud when I see it in football. I might not be able to spot the bad qualities in most people on first glance, but damn it, in football, I know when a team's a fraud. And I ignored that instinct because I let the crowd convince me. I'm not letting them do it to me with the Bills. Okay? I'm not pointing to the New England game the first time they played them as a concerning sign. They can beat you in a number of different ways, but they are playing a team that is as hot as any team in the NFL right now. And I don't care how good Sean McDermott might be as a defensive mind. I think the Ravens are the superior team. And I know that because they are going to be going on the road, it's going to be hard. But damn it, it's hard to stop Lamar Jackson. It's hard to stop Derrick Henry. We'll see about Zay Flowers. Their defense is playing better. I just feel like the Ravens are the team to beat in the AFC right now. I'm very ready for them potentially getting a rematch with the Chiefs in the championship round if the Chiefs get there. I just feel very, very confident in Baltimore right now. It's no knock on the Bills. I think you've done a great job of reinventing yourself this season after losing Stephon Diggs and getting to where you are now. Josh Allen's probably going to win MVP, partially because of voter fatigue with Lamar Jackson. Nobody's playing quarterback better than Lamar Jackson right now. Derrick Henry he's the ageless wonder. They're going to win that game.
Go back to your Vikings fraud watch. They kind of gave this season the 13-3 Packers from like 5 years ago ish.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how that felt to me. We're like, they were 13-3, but they were never 13-3. I like the Ravens in this one for every single one of the reasons you just said. I think Lamar is the MVP this year. This is such a huge game for both of these franchises and where they're at in their journey right now as a franchise. I feel sick that this is not an AFC championship game right now because it feels wild that either of these teams are going to be out in the second round. It just feels like it shouldn't be that way. I don't remember the last time I was so hyped for a game. Like everybody was hyping up the Lions Vikings and I always kind of felt Lions in that one, but this one, like I'm losing sleep over. I'm so excited about it. The Ravens are playing out of their mind. The Bills are too, but this something feels different this year for the Ravens. Derrick Henry,
it's like a matchup. It's a matchup of like, all right, both teams are playing well, but which one do I trust more? I just trust the
That's
Ravens
it
more. Like
exactly.
that's the fraud point that I was making. Like the Bills have a tiny, tiny bit of fraudulence in them that like if things don't go their way against a really good opponent, I could see them falling short. I just don't see that happening with the Ravens.
I think
Something
this
just
one's gonna be close.
clicked. Yeah, something just clicked kind of late season there for the Ravens, and they just went, as much as we dogged on the Steelers earlier for just falling off a cliff, the Ravens went in the complete opposite directions. They're playing such good football right now, and I agree with you, Katie. Lamar Jackson would be my MVP pick. For about 75% of the season, it was Josh Allen. I think Lamar Jackson's the MVP this year. And this, also going back to what you said, Katie, I don't remember the last time I've been this hyped up for a playoff matchup that wasn't a either conference or title game or the Super Bowl. Last year, Chiefs-Bills, it was also a divisional round game. I think this is of that ilk, and it's just, I love, this is why we watch this sport, for games like this, and this is going to be so much fun. I love that it is in Buffalo. This is giving just this game a whole new meaning. I will also take the Ravens because I don't know if there's a team right now that I would bet against if they were playing the Ravens right now. We'll see after this week, but yeah, give me the Ravens.
All right, that does it. That does it for our divisional round previews. Let's do what we always do, Sean, which is what?
We shift gears. Going to, do you even know?
Oh my god.
Surprise, Katie.
I quit the podcast again. I hear I quit. That's it.
We'll bring it back one day, maybe,
It's 50th
for a
time.
little bit.
It's just like Larry David on Seinfeld, just quitting every
I
year.
quit again. No, we're switching gears over to F1. Not a lot to talk about in F1, other than the new year change. Drivers have officially gone to new teams, but we do have one new departure from Formula One. That being not on the driver's side or the technical side, but on the media side. Someone that we've all come to know and love because we all found this sport through Drive to Survive on Netflix, of course, and the commentator that Netflix always interviewed was F1 TV's Will Buxton. He's written books about this sport. He has covered it for years and years and years. Nick even pointed out today that he used to race against Max Verstappen. He didn't even beat Nicholas Latifi, the Canadian goat Tifi. But Will Buxton is no more at F1 TV. He's coming to the States, guys. Will Buxton leaving F1 TV and coming over and joining the Fox fam. He's going to be the lead commentator for IndyCar on Fox. IndyCar, moving away from NBC, they're going to be on Fox this year. Check it out. I'm excited, guys. Like, Fox is putting a lot of money into IndyCar, and I've said this on this podcast before. IndyCar is kind of like a little bit of a sleeping giant because we know how much or how popular F1 has become in the States. IndyCar is our version of that. And it's faster, and there's ovals, and there's street courses, and there's road courses. IndyCar is really cool if you just watch it, and I think bringing over a big name like Will Buxton is kind of like a cool thing. I don't know. I'm geeking out over this. I'm more excited that Will Buxton is coming to commentate on IndyCar than I was that Tom Brady was coming to, join the Fox broadcast booth.
Well, that's because one was a proven broadcaster and one was not, and we know the results from that. This is Fox throwing a massive bag at Will Buxton and just saying, look, people know him from F1. Let's bring him over. Name and brand recognition right away. I'm sure he got paid tons of money, not the $375 million that Tom Brady is getting from Fox, but I'm sure it's a very nice little chunk of change, and it will bring some familiarity to fans who like open wheel racing with F1 and then find IndyCar on Fox this season. It will be interesting to see how they do Drive to Survive without him, giving his little quips there. Maybe he does for this last season.
The thing about IndyCar is it's on Fox.
That
was pretty good.
I think it was too. It's funny because he gets banged for that pretty hard. He takes a lot of heat for the things that he says. If you watch Drive to Survive as an F1 fan, that's not always for you. I think a lot of people forget that this show needs to be watchable and entertaining as someone that knows nothing about F1 and then brings you into the sport. So with that, there is a lot of things that are obvious to F1 fans about there's a race this weekend, that means it's race week. Things like that are said.
If you qualify first.
Exactly. There's things that are said that sound so ridiculous, but when you watch, I'm grieving this a little bit. I was really surprised about this because when I watch a full F1 weekend, when it's race week, Will Buxton is such a gorgeous storyteller, and he's someone that you could tell he loves it so much, and he eats, sleeps, breathes F1 and racing in general, that when he's the one, like in the pre-race shows and stuff, that's narrating the feature, like lead up packs into the race, man, like he's someone that he will give me goosebumps every single time because he just knows how to narrate. He knows how to storytell. And that's such a big part of this sport. Like, that's why Drive to Survive does so well, because the everything behind the scenes and the storylines and the context, and there's only 20 drivers, so you get to know everyone so well. Like, the way that he weaves all these things, he does so well at it, and I'm gonna miss him on it. Like, I watch F1 TV all the time, and I'm gonna miss him being on there. Like, the dynamic between all of them together is so good. Everyone knows my feelings about Danica Patrick, so let's not bring her in more.
The actual former IndyCar driver. He's a journo nerd. I mean, he is.
He's
but
such
like,
a
you're
nerd,
right.
And it plays
Yes.
so well. It does so well. Sean, because he is such a nerd.
I will say
Brackets
this.
complimentary.
I fell in love, or I got into the idea of becoming a sports journalist one day when I was 10 years old because of guys and commentators like Will Buxton who have a unique ability to tell you the story. It's a weird thing when you watch a sport and you fall in love with the person telling you about the sport rather than the person playing the sport. Most kids, when they watch, a football game, they want to grow up to be that running back or that quarterback. They don't want to grow up to be the person talking about those players. But that was me.
I disagree for one reason. I loved Keith Jackson doing college football when I was a kid.
But see,
Nelly.
that's what I'm talking about, though. You find those characters where it's like, I don't care so much about Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton. I care about the guy telling me about that.
Like a Bob
And
Cole.
I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait to see Will Buxton bring his flair and his passion and his nerdiness to IndyCar, because this is a sport that needs a spotlight shown on it, and I'm glad that it's getting that spotlight. Also, I mean, he gets to broadcast the Indianapolis 500. The greatest spectacle in racing, and that's going to be awesome.
It's a race I've always wanted to attend, and every year it comes up and something gets in the way. Maybe this will be the year.
I can tell you I will probably be there this year because Fox is going all
Katie,
out with local affiliates.
See you in Indianapolis.
Live pod from Indianapolis?
Yes.
Us 3 and 300,000 of our closest friends on the first Sunday in May.
Actually, that would be really fun if we do a live pod from there.
That would be fun.
This is May. It's cool.
I'm
It's going to be
someone
sad
that
to see Will Buxton go.
I'm looking to get more into IndyCar because I'm an F1 girly and that's it. Like, I don't watch any other racing. But honestly, like, someone like Will Buxton, because there's so much familiarity with F1 TV with me for him, I honestly think it would make it a little more familiar and I'd be a little more willing to tune into IndyCar because there is that sense of like, okay, I know you, I trust you.
Yeah.
Teach me about Indy because honestly, I just don't know a lot about it because I'm only ever just been F1.
I think that's what Fox knew they were doing too. They were like, hey, let's bank off this F1 popularity. Like, we have an open wheel circuit here in the US called IndyCar, and like, if Formula One is popular and this is their most popular or memed commentator, let's use that. Let's piggyback off this popularity of open wheel racing and show people what a great series this is. Because for me, I have been watching IndyCar now for 3 years. It's more competitive than Formula One by far, because on any given Sunday, any driver can win. Not just one of like 8 drivers. Any driver can win. And it's not as complicated as NASCAR, where there's I can't even get into it. There's so many things with NASCAR that I have a problem with. Yeah, it's a circle. They do some street courses, but there's also overtimes. There's stages. Sometimes you just race to crash into each other, and then maybe you survive that crash. But like, IndyCar isn't that. IndyCar is like really good pure racing, and it's a spec sport. So I'm excited.
Me too. And I'm excited that we did this.
This has been episode 60 of the Gridiron Podcast. Thanks for listening and or watching, you gipheads.
I still think we should look into that.
No? Okay. Thanks for watching and listening. And as always, you can reach us at The Gridiron Podcast. Throw it back up there, Nick. The Gridiron Podcast 3 at gmail.com. That's our email. The Gridiron Podcast number 3. Damn those other two. At gmail.com. For Nick Shook and Katie Caldwell, I am Sean Barie. And as always, live life in the fast lane.
I got nothing. Good night, Canada.
Good night, Canada. Good night, Regan.
Happy retirement.
Happy retirement.